Well, Professor Owasanoye is still with us in the studios. He is Executive Secretary of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. Just quickly, I'll close the moments with you now. What are we looking at moving forward? We have finally, sensitized Nigerians, and a lot of Nigerians are getting sensitized as to what is going on, especially when we begin to see more examples from the regulators, for instance, from regulatory authorities, like what we're seeing with the CBN, for instance. But what more are we looking at doing to strengthen our institutions, for instance?
Well, apart from removing this shyness from the regulators, I think the ultimate objective of government is to have the money that we need for sustainable development. Now, right now, a lot of people are complaining that the government is borrowing a lot of money. But if you have income generated, which the economy has the potential for, you borrow less. That's number one. You are able to meet your SDG goals. There are all manner of agendas that have been set ahead of government, not just this government, any government. So, and we know that the potential of the Nigerian economy is currently undervalued and underappreciated. So by improved regulatory oversight and enforcement, we're able to make sure that we have much more income, definitely, than we had before. Just recently, I think FRS announced that they had collected, I think, about 1 trillion in taxes. I mean, these are new things for us as a country.
They also say you're looking into the accounts of billionaires.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, because there are people who go, you see videos of people who are spraying money, sometimes with a machine. In this economy, you should ask the guy, how much are you paying as tax? Where's your tax book? That's what everybody does all over the world. You don't need to throw people in jail. Just say, can we see how much you've been paying as taxes? When people donate and is not linked with corporate social responsibility, things for which they can get rebates and all that, we should find out how much they are paying as tax. So ultimately, the goal is to improve the ability of government to meet sustainable development goals.
How is the private sector taking this? Because some people might say, I mean, they talked about how difficult it is to do business here. Even this morning, we had to emphasize that quite a bit, especially from the angle of exporters. How is the private sector adapting to this? Because they would say, government is still not providing the basics. We still do all of that by ourselves, and they're shining a torch on our activities.
Okay, but the justification for that will not be for regulatory abuse or stealing or corruption. I think that if you provide all of those things, you put it on the cards, okay, there are ways by which government will recognize that you built a road, for example, from point A to point B in order to continue in business. You get rebates for some of those things. It's legal. You don't have to steal, you don't have to cheat or falsify the records. So I think that there are some private sector people who are quite happy at what is going on because they will not do what some are doing and they feel unhappy. It's contrary to their corporate principles and code, and they do not like to see that. It makes competition almost impossible because company A is cheating and getting away with it. They cannot do it. And they will tell you we cannot do it. So when you start this cleanup, they are very happy. They align with you. They, in fact, come behind and tell you, this environment, the playing field is not level. Some people are doing what we cannot do in our company. 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got to deal with it. So it will be mixed. And by the way, nobody will immediately be happy when you begin to do reforms. When this whole anti-corruption thing started, many people were unhappy.
Professor, when you look at the scheme of things, I know we've touched on the private sector so much, but just looking at the public sector now, knowing that a bulk of our national resources obviously goes down to the states and by extension the local governments, and you hear some of the things that come out, hundreds of billions missing from this account, or Transparency International now has estimated that approximately 240 billion naira is lost every single year just to security votes alone. When you have those kinds of figures out, what do you think can be done to really kind of clamp down on the kind of, not really clamp down, rather ensure accountability at the state level at a time when you have court processes that stop institutions from investigating some states in the country?
I agree with you that this is a big problem and a dilemma. Citizens need to challenge their own governors and government more closely. That's why I support improved resource allocation to states and local government. Because right now, the arrangement we have, when anything goes wrong, it's easy for governors to sell a dummy to their own state and say the problem is coming from Abuja. They have everything at their disposal to deal with the issue because they say the federal government takes much more. So if we reverse that, and I think we need to work hard to reverse that for the states and the local government to have much more. One is that development should happen faster, okay? Of course, they will still try and steal the money, but when the evidence is there that the money is in your state, it's been stolen there, they are the ones who will be begging that all these institutions that right now they are blocking should come and help them out. So I agree with you that something needs to be done, but you know, citizen action is critical. Because our politics is so volatile, it's very easy. If you start throwing the searchlight here or there, for somebody to play up any card, they can play up a constitutional card, a federalism card, a restructuring card, or persecution card, anyone, and the people will believe it. So it's a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight, in my view.
So to break, essentially, in your view, if the citizens don't get involved, things like breaking the judicial bottlenecks are essentially nearly impossible.
It would continue to happen. And mind you, the judiciary is just an institution that can do so much. I always say, for example, if we were to conscientiously take forward all the corruption cases that have merit, and there are plenty of them, where's the capacity to prosecute? We don't have the prosecutors. We don't have the courts. We don't have the judiciary. So you have to pick and choose the big-ticket ones. It's not as if the small ones are not important, because retail corruption impacts perception. But how many prosecutors do you have? So, for example, over 4,000 Boko Haram people were arrested over a period of time from like 2013 or thereabouts. They were only processed last year up till now because of challenges with where are you going to hold them, who are the people who will prosecute them, gathering the evidence against them, and of course the courts to deal with it. So we have a lot of challenges, infrastructure and capacity that we need to deal with gradually.
Let's quickly go to Lagos now. I understand that Nyota has a question for you.
Prof, when you talk about dealing with these things gradually, are there timelines to your submission?
When you say my submission, corruption will not disappear in this country, for sure, but it can be significantly diminished. Every country has corruption, and if you know of one country that has no corruption, I'd like to learn from you. There's corruption everywhere, but our objective is to diminish it significantly. And in this, it's work in progress. It's definitely work in progress.
You say when you say diminish it significantly, one would expect that we'll be talking about building institutions. And in building institutions, the citizens will want to see the government's response to certain things that happen within governance. So issues like the allegation against the finance minister and a certificate, NYSC certificate, what's the position of PACAC?
Okay, I know that many people have feasted on Professor Sage's comments. Professor Sage's comments are his comments. It's not the position of PACAC. And government has responded, and we align with that response, that the matter has been investigated. Now, before you throw your next question, can I say, but it's taking for so long? Yes, but government has not told you that the matter is closed.
But if you're talking about investigating, a case of a man who was working with a forged ICANN certificate, the man was jailed. Now, this is a case of an NYSC certificate. It means the person cannot serve in government without that document from the NYSC. And you say it's being investigated. No timelines are being given for that. What do you expect the citizens to think about all of this?
Of course, you would expect some cynicism or sometimes, how do I call it, regret and all that. But government has not said the matter is closed. Many government officers have spoken to this issue. And I think that what they've said holds. I know that Femi Adesina, for example, has spoken about this issue.
Now, you say you're aligning yourself with the position of government, but you are an advisory committee. So what was the advice you gave the government as regards this matter?
Am I supposed to tell the advice that we give to government on air? We give the advice to our principal, not through channels.
So your advice, you did not advise the government in any way, since you are aligning with the government.
I didn't say so. I didn't say. I'm saying that I'm not at liberty to tell you the advice that we have given to government, which government has not taken a position on yet. I'm not allowed to give it on air. That's what I'm saying. I'm sure you know that.
All right, Prof, let me just ask you this, because, I mean, with the work you're doing and all the other anti-corruption agencies, I believe you have a target of what you want to achieve. But, you know, when, for instance, I walk into a ministry in Abuja and it comes across, maybe by the submissions of one or two persons there, that they don't seem to be on the same page with this government. Could you then tell us, how would you say this mindset has caught on with civil servants, start with the federal level, for instance?
You know, change is something, and when I use the word change, I'm not using it as a slogan now. This is the thing that is most difficult for people to assimilate, but it is the only thing that is also importantly constant, okay? Of course, if people have their own attitudes, a culture that has been ingrained in the system, so when you talk about systemic corruption, when somebody comes and says, I'm going to do reform, you are going to face resistance. And they are going to watch to see whether or not you are serious about what you mean and you set out to do. So there would always be people who are determined to undermine your effort. If somebody chooses to do some reforms in channels, some people would not be happy about it, whatever the reform is all about, no matter how needed the reforms may be. So don't expect that there will be general acceptability of what you set out to do. But that should not stop you from focusing on your objective and pursuing your goal. So if you walk into one ministry and you see the body language of a public servant and it appears the fellow is still looking for gratification, then you use that to generalize and say, oh, but nothing has changed. You will not be right.
I'm just wondering, do you have a way to measure the objectives and where we are with respect to what we want to achieve, such that when you leave or whoever leaves any office, we know that we're continuing from where we stopped? Any way to measure where we are?
Okay, so let me give one or two examples for that. When this government came in and we evaluated the approach to anti-corruption, one of the things that we found was this practice of, if you want to arraign someone or prosecute someone, you could find 150, 200